Welcome to the deep dive. We're your shortcut, really, to getting past the noise and figuring out what actually matters. Today, we're tackling something that, well, it literally keeps everything moving, our whole economy, often kind of silently in the background. Yeah, we're talking about trucking, and specifically some really monumental changes, regulatory shifts hitting the industry hard in 2025. Just picture this, a truck driver heading out today. Now, jump forward to 2025, that same trip. The truck itself, maybe even how they get paid, it could all look totally different. So our mission here for this deep dive is to unpack these 15 major changes. They're laid out in our source material, Trucking's top 15 regulatory shifts of 2025. We want to get beyond just what they are. We want to understand, how they're supposed to make roads safer, maybe cleaner, fairer, and what it all really means for the truckers, the companies, and yeah, for you, because you share the highway or you just, benefit from everything those trucks deliver every single day.
It's really hard to overstate how vital trucking is. It's the absolute backbone. Move something like, 72% of all freight in the U.S.? These aren't just trucks. They're like the arteries of commerce. And regulations, they're a constant thing in this industry. It's just the scale, the impact. It demands it. These changes are fundamentally tied to bigger things we all care about, right? Public safety, sustainability, economic fairness. It's always evolving, adapting to new challenges, new tech.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the trucks themselves. It sounds like a bunch of these early changes are really focused on making these huge machines, well, smarter and safer. What's kind of leading the way there?
It's spot on. Leading the charge is automatic emergency braking, AEB. That's becoming mandatory. The rules, we expect them finalized probably early 2025, and they'll require all new heavy trucks, we're talking over 10,000 pounds, to have these systems. Think of them like smart brakes. They sense danger ahead. They can actually stop the truck or slow it way down if a crash looks like it's about to happen. Fleets will get a few years, to upgrade their current trucks or buy new ones that comply.
That's pretty amazing tech. But beyond just stopping crashes, which is obviously huge, what's the deeper impact for how companies run their fleets? Is there any pushback? Maybe from smaller outfits worried about the cost, or drivers feeling like it's, I don't know, Big Brother watching?
That's a really good point. There are always those initial hurdles with new tech, the adaptation challenges. But the real win here, it goes beyond just stopping that one crash, the data from these AEB systems. It gives companies this incredible insight into near misses, things that almost happen. That lets fleets be proactive. They can spot risks on certain routes, maybe even with certain driver habits, and actually address them before something happens. It's about turning every close call from just a statistic into, a learning opportunity. It helps build a much more data-driven safety culture overall.
Yeah, that makes sense. It really sounds like it's a more complete approach to safety, not just blaming human error after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay, but speaking of proactive safety, there's also a big push on managing speed, right? We're hearing speed limiters are going to be required for the big rigs. What's the goal there?
Exactly. By May 2025, trucks over 26,000 pounds will need these devices. They cap the top speed, usually somewhere between, say, 65 and 70 miles per hour. The main goal, undeniable. It's safety. Reducing those high-speed crashes involving massive trucks, the potential to save lives there is just immense. Plus, there's a bonus. Lower fuel consumption across the fleet. And for an industry that often runs on really thin margins, that's a pretty significant long-term economic benefit too.
You touched on traffic flow earlier, and I know some drivers worry about that, this idea they might become sort of a rolling roadblock. How does the industry actually plan to deal with that? Are there studies showing it won't just lead to more frustrated car drivers trying risky moves to get around them?
It's a totally valid concern, yeah. And it's something regulators in the industry are watching very closely. The challenge is maintaining that smooth flow, especially on hills where a governed truck might slow things down a bit. But generally, the studies suggest that the overall drop in severe high-speed accidents outweighs those potential congestion issues. The focus is shifting towards a more consistent, predictable speed for these big vehicles. In theory, that should actually lead to more stable traffic patterns over time, not more sudden braking or swerving. It's always a balance, efficiency versus safety. And right now, the scale's tipping pretty firmly towards prioritizing crash prevention.
Okay. Then we've got expanded electronic logging device rules, ELDs, and also some new safety tech for older trucks. I remember my uncle, he used to drive, pulling out those old paper logbooks. They always look like such a nightmare to manage. So these ELDs, they must be a total game changer, right? For efficiency and just keeping track.
Oh, absolutely. ELDs are basically digital diaries. They track driving hours automatically, replacing those paper logs, which, let's be honest, could sometimes be flexible. This means real-time, basically tamper-proof data on a driver's hours. Makes it much harder to drive longer than legally allowed, which is huge for fighting fatigue. And these rules are getting stricter now, covering more trucks, even ones built before the year 2000. Paper logs are pretty much on their way out. Plus, there's this push and encouragement for other tech like dash cams, lane assist systems, especially if they're hauling valuable stuff or hazardous materials.
That real-time data sounds incredibly useful, especially for accountability. And speaking of that, the crash preventability program is expanding. What's that about? What does it mean if an accident really wasn't the trucking company's fault?
This is a big step for fairness, actually. It means certain types of accidents, like, say, another driver completely loses control and hits the truck, won't automatically count against the trucking company's safety record anymore. And crucially, things like dash cam footage can help prove it wasn't their fault. Before this, even if they did nothing wrong, an accident could hurt their safety score, which affects everything: insurance, contracts. Now, with clear proof, companies can keep a more accurate safety profile. That's good for everyone, really. Good companies get recognized.
Right. And then wrapping up this first chunk on tech and safety, we're seeing more electronic inspections and enforcement. How does that work? Does it actually save drivers time?
Yeah, this is a real efficiency booster. More states are rolling out tech for automatic roadside inspections. Some trucks can basically get checked electronically as they pass weigh stations without needing to pull over every time. That saves serious time for drivers with good safety records. They keep rolling instead of sitting in line. And at the same time, it lets the enforcement folks focus their attention on trucks that might actually pose a higher risk, finding potential problems before they cause trouble. It's just smarter, more targeted enforcement, better for safe drivers, better for road safety.
It's really fascinating, isn't it, how technology isn't just some add-on anymore. It's becoming baked right into how trucks run and how safety works. It's really creating this data-driven way of looking at safety.
Okay, so we've seen how tech is changing the trucks. But what about the person sitting in the driver's seat? I mean, these huge machines are only as safe as the individual driving them, right? So let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the human side. How are these new rules affecting driver wellness and making sure the industry itself is accountable? Yeah, excellent transition. First up is digital medical certifications. Starting June 23rd, 2025, truck drivers' medical results, their checkups, have to be sent electronically. And here's the key part. If that medical certificate lapses, their commercial license could be gone within 60 days. And it helps make sure that only drivers who are healthy and alert are actually out there driving. Cuts down on paperwork hassles too, and just generally aims for a higher standard of physical fitness for the job. It's not just about the driver's health. It directly impacts safety for all of us on the road.
That sounds pretty straightforward. A clear line on driver fitness. And building on that, what about something like drug and alcohol use? That's always a concern. What's changing with the drug and alcohol clearinghouse rules?
They're getting significantly tougher, yeah.
Yeah?
Starting in 2025, any driver who tests positive for drugs or alcohol, they'll immediately lose their commercial license. And getting it back means going through a really strict return-to-duty process. This isn't just, a minor penalty. It involves interviews, a lot of education, extra testing down the line. States are going to enforce this across the country. The clearinghouse itself is like this national database, so a driver who fails a test can't just hop over to another state or company and pretend it didn't happen. It really hammers home how serious it is to operate a commercial vehicle impaired. Protects everyone.
That sounds like a really strong tool for accountability. Okay, and lastly in this section, there are changes to how companies themselves are identified. The motor carrier number, the MC number, is being phased out, replaced by the US DOT number. Why do that? What problem does that fix?
Right. For a long time, companies juggled two main IDs, the US DOT number, mostly for safety stuff, and the MC number, more for their authority to operate and financial side. Now, to simplify things and help prevent fraud, they're phasing out the MC number. The US DOT number becomes the one main identifier. It seems like just a name change, but it's really about consolidation. It makes tracking companies, regulating them, much more straightforward. It makes it tougher for, say, dishonest operators to set up ghost companies or play games with their identity. It pushes towards more transparency and accountability for the companies themselves.
So if you kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture here, it sounds like a real push to, professionalize the industry even more and build public trust.
Exactly. It reflects this concerted effort, to professionalize things and make sure the public can trust the industry, elevating standards for both the drivers and the companies they work for.
Okay, we've seen the smarter trucks, the more accountable drivers. But what about the money and the planet? This next bit feels like where we see some really fundamental shifts in how the whole industry has to operate, financially and environmentally. Let's start with the financial side. Higher insurance requirements. Heard some states are bumping the minimum coverage way up, maybe even $2 million. That obviously helps victims if there's a bad accident, but what's the ripple effect for the trucking companies?
It definitely ensures there's enough money available to help victims after a really severe crash,
Yeah.
which is critical, right? Given the potential damage a large truck can cause. But, and this is a big but, there's a nuance here, it puts real financial pressure on the smaller trucking companies. Those increased premium costs can be tough to swallow for small businesses, the owner-operators, who are often the backbone of regional trucking. So it's this tricky balance, protecting the public versus ensuring these smaller, vital businesses can actually survive and compete.
Absolutely. That's a tough one. Now, more directly for the drivers, we're seeing movement towards fair pay for non-driving tasks. Some states are saying companies have to pay drivers for all their time, not just when the wheels are turning. So waiting at docks, during inspections, that time counts now. What kind of difference does that make to a driver's life? And could it maybe even help with the driver shortage we always hear about?
Well, fair paychecks are a huge deal. Huge for morale, for retention. Historically, so much of that waiting time just wasn't paid. When drivers actually get compensated for their whole workday, it makes the job itself more appealing, more sustainable. That keeps drivers happier, more likely to stick around. And yeah, potentially, it could definitely help ease that nationwide driver shortage, which is a constant critical problem for the industry. It's about finally recognizing the real value of all their time, not just driving time.
Makes total sense. Okay, next up, broker transparency. These are the folks who connect shippers with trucking companies, right? Now they have to share more info, more records. How does that change the power balance in the supply chain?
Right, freight brokers. This change is really designed to shift those power dynamics. In the past, truckers, especially smaller carriers, could feel a bit in the dark. Maybe they didn't know the full rate the broker charged the shipper, leading to worries about unfair cuts or hidden fees. Now, with this mandated transparency, it cuts down the chances of those kinds of secret deals. It empowers the carriers, particularly the smaller ones, to negotiate better fair rates. It encourages more of a partnership, not just a transaction. Builds trust. Makes resolving disputes easier, too.
Interesting. Okay, let's shift now to the environment. Trucking is obviously a huge source of emissions. What are the stricter emissions rules coming in, and what's the immediate effect supposed to be?
Starting January 2025, new trucks have to meet tougher pollution standards, period. And some states, like California is the big example, are pushing even harder, requiring more electric trucks or alternative fuels. It's a direct response to needing cleaner air, needing to cut down smog, harmful gases. It's about tackling climate change and improving air quality, especially around cities and highways. The flip side, though, is cost. It generally means higher upfront prices for new trucks. Companies have to budget for that, and it might speed up retiring older, dirtier trucks.
And finally, there are environmental zones and urban delivery rules. This sounds like it directly changes how stuff gets into our cities. How do these zones work? What's the reality for companies trying to deliver goods?
You're right, it's a very direct impact. Several big cities are setting up these clean air zones. Basically, only newer, cleaner trucks can drive in them without paying hefty charges. Many cities are also restricting truck delivery hours, trying to cut down traffic and pollution during peak times. The goal is less pollution in dense urban areas, and it definitely nudges companies towards greener tech. But it adds a lot of complexity for logistics. Companies need much more careful planning for routes, delivery schedules. And yeah, it can mean higher operating costs as they adapt their fleets and figure out how to work within these new city rules. It really brings up that important question again, doesn't it? How do we balance this push for a cleaner, fairer industry with the economic realities? Especially for the smaller companies, the independent folks running on tight margins.
Wow. Okay. It is crystal clear that 2025 is shaping up to be just a massive year of change for trucking. We've covered so much ground, from the safety tech making trucks smarter, to rules keeping drivers well and companies honest, all the way to these big shifts in money and environmental impact. It really feels like a top-to-bottom overhaul, touching pretty much every part of the business.
It really is. And these regulations, they just highlight how dynamic trucking is. It's always adapting, right, to new tech, to what society demands, to economic pressures. And the ripple effects, they go way beyond just the trucks and drivers. They touch supply chains, how much things cost for us consumers, our daily lives in ways we probably don't even think about.
Yeah.
It just shows how incredibly central this industry is to, well, everything we do.
Absolutely. So Thinking about all these new rules, all this tech coming down the pike, what do you listening think is maybe the single biggest challenge, or maybe the most exciting opportunity for trucking in the next, say, 5 years? And how might that actually filter down and impact your own life? Something to chew on.